everybody. Hi everybody. I'm Ann Madison. I am the co-chair of the Newborn SIG and I'm a newborn hospitalist.
And I am Christy Tiburon, and I am the chair of the Newborn SIG and also a newborn hospitalist. We're from the Kansas City, Missouri area. So today we are here to talk to you guys about tips for newborns and infants to keep them safe in that first year of life. So one of the first things that always comes to mind when it comes to newborns is always going to be safe sleep. So every year about 3,500 babies in the United States die from unsafe sleep circumstances. And so it's just so important that any interaction that we have with families, that we remind them the importance of safe sleep. There's lots of research that also supports the more that we model safe sleep, even especially in the hospitals right after when babies are born, that we are constantly talking to them and correcting unsafe sleep practices just so that we're reiterating kind of the importance of it every single time. So we all are familiar with the ABC, so always alone, always on our back, nothing else in the crib but the baby. And in the hospital setting, sometimes cribs may be propped up at angles, and so with nurses doing lab draws and things like that, so we always want to correct that and make sure that we're reminding parents that babies should always be flat on their backs. And that goes for when they go home as well. They should not be using any positioners or using any props. So a lot of parents are sometimes worried that when babies are spitting up or having reflux that they should put them on an incline, but research actually shows us that that actually increases their risk of aspiration. So even babies who are refluxy, we want to make sure that they're always laying on their back. The other thing in the crib, sometimes parents and visitors, they want to bring stuffed animals or cute extra layers of blankets, and we always want to remove those from the cribs and remind parents at home that they should only be using just the one fitted crib sheet. Baby should always sleep on a firm, hard mattress. Us as adults like our nice, soft, cushiony beds, but due to infants' poor neck and head control, when they're on like a soft, cushiony bed, that really kind of puts their chin towards their chest and can kind of close off their airway. So when they are laying on that firm, hard mattress, that keeps their chin up to the ceiling and their airway nice and open. The one fitted crib sheet is also really important, so just making sure that there's not extra layers or blankets or pads underneath the baby in the hospital, and then definitely obviously when they go home, just reminding parents that it's tempting sometimes to put extra layers underneath the baby, especially if somebody spits up. You just want to remove the top sheet, but we want to make sure that there's just one layer underneath them. The other thing is just, so in the hospital we can do some skin to skin with mom and baby, and a lot of times obviously when the baby is immediately born or when they're doing skin to skin, they're sleeping on the mother's chest, but we want to remind them that anytime the mom were to close her eyes or to rest also, that the baby should always be taken out of skin to skin or off the mom's chest and immediately placed into a safe sleep environment, so either in the bassinet or in a crib that's typically in the same room as the parents. Let's see here. So I like this one demographic that I always like to kind of show families that, we want to do this bed sharing or room sharing, not bed sharing. And so just kind of showing parents this. I typically take it around with me when I'm rounding in the hospital and just really showing parents what a safe sleep environment really looks like. That it's good for babies to be in the same room as the parents, but they should always be in their own little bassinet. And this, picture just demonstrates that the baby's in there alone, nothing else is in the crib, same as like in the hospital as well. So a lot of times when parents are in the hospital, they will be co-sleeping in the beds, and we just have to remind them that we constantly need to be fixing that. Let's see here, anything else? I think the other thing when it comes to sleep is a lot of parents sometimes worry that their babies are really cold and they have a tendency to want to over swaddle them or over bundle them. So we just want to remind parents that babies are comfortable at the same room temperature that parents are comfortable. So that first 24 hours, we have infants often wear their hats in the newborn nursery as they're kind of working on their thermoregulation, but after that, babies should be able to maintain their temperatures without their hats, and we don't want infants sleeping with hats, especially when they go home. So hats are often too big for their heads, and then they could fall off in the crib or kind of come down over their face and kind of make it difficult for them to breathe. So no hats, or especially cute headbands for a lot of the girls when they go home. They may have cute outfits that have cute little headbands, and I always tell parents it's fine for them to wear that when the parents are awake and right there with them, but if they're going to be in a different room or when the baby is going to be sleeping, we want to remove all of that stuff from the baby's head. And then babies should be put to bed on their backs with just like their sleeper or their onesie, and then either one swaddle blanket or one sleep sack. So swaddle blankets work fine for a majority of patients as long as they are educated properly on how to swaddle infants. So the biggest thing is to make sure that the base of the swaddle starts at the bottom of the neck or kind of the top of the shoulders, that if babies are placed too low on the swaddle blanket where it's covering the back of their head, when you cross that over to swaddle them, then that kind of can cover up their face really easily. The other thing I talk to parents a lot about when it comes to swaddling is a lot of babies when they're in utero kind of prefer to have their hands up by their face a lot of times. And so those babies have a tendency to not love to be swaddled their hands in tightly. So babies who are constantly kind of breaking free or seem like they're fussy when the parents are telling you like, oh, they just won't sleep in the crib or the bassinet. A lot of times it's because they want those hands out. They don't want them to be swaddled in tightly. So those parents, we just tell them to either swaddle underneath the armpit, just leave their hands out, put a long sleeve sleeper on them, or just use the sleep sack so that their hands are always free, because a lot of infants just do prefer to have their hands up by their face when they're sleeping. The other thing to keep in mind that when we're swaddling infants is that we want to make sure that they are not swaddled too tightly with their legs. So in some cultures even, they will try to straighten the baby's legs out completely straight and really kind of put a very tight swaddle on the infant, and the baby doesn't have good mobility of their lower extremities. And so we want to educate parents and families on that as well, that the swaddle should be firm around the infant so that it's not breaking free and coming loose and occluding their face, but it should be still loose enough that the baby can still move their lower extremities. I also take this picture kind of around with me as well for a lot of families, just to see like what is a good swaddle and what is an unsafe swaddle with the legs, and then also like covering the face and things like that. Other ways to help lower the risk of SIDS include to breastfeed. So evidence does show that human milk does reduce the risk of SIDS. The longer that we give babies breast milk, the more protection that it gives. Even after you add solid food to the baby's diet, continue to give breast milk for as long as they will tolerate it. The other thing that I talk a lot about when it comes to sleep is pacifiers. So pacifiers have been shown to be protective against SIDS, but we just want to make sure that we're not using a clip or it attached to anything in the sleep environment. So once breastfeeding is well established, then it's okay to go ahead and introduce the pacifier, but the passy should just be alone by itself in the crib, just none of those little stuffed animals on the pacifier, and it shouldn't be clipped in any way to the baby's nightgown. Okay. Make sure I've got all my. So I have one other picture that when I'm doing safe sleep education that I like to kind of show parents too, and it's especially for the parents who are worried about their baby being on their back. For if they're kind of a spitty baby. And so this is just another picture, and we can kind of put all these, give you guys copies of this stuff that just kind of really shows the anatomy of the airway versus the esophagus. and kind of how when we put the baby prone, how it really increases their risk of aspiration and does not prevent them from choking, versus what parents often think that with the babies kind of spit up, that being on the tummy is safer, and research just shows us that it doesn't. But then I think this picture really just helps to show parents like the true anatomy and how it just really just dumps the emesis kind of right into their airway when they're prone instead. For a minute.
So now we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about infant feeding. And so newborns really just need breast milk or formula for the first 6 months of life. And in the very newborn period until they're a couple weeks old, really once feeding is established and they're back to their birth weight, they can go have a little bit longer stretches. But in that beginning, we really like them to eat at least every 3 hours. And so we always encourage parents, if the babies haven't woke up after 3 hours, to go ahead and wake them. And your 3 hours starts at the beginning of a feeding. So for breastfeeding moms, sometimes they feel like all they do is feed their babies, because they really do. So breast milk is fine. Some moms choose to breastfeed, some moms just want to pump and feed. And so some tips for breastfeeding moms, if they're choosing to pump, obviously they want to wash their hands before they start pumping. And then once they pump, that breast milk should be put in the fridge within the first 4 hours of after they've pumped it. A lot of times we encourage moms to store it in small amounts, like 2 to 4 ounces, so that they aren't wasting any of the breast milk if the baby doesn't eat more than that. And obviously it's liquid gold, so we don't want to have to dump any of it. It's best to store the breast milk at the back of the fridge, just because there's less temperature fluctuation. And so fresh breast milk is good in the fridge for 4 days. If it's going to be longer than that, then it's recommended that it goes into a freezer. And it's good in a like a side-by-side freezer for 9 months, or a deep freeze for up to 12 months. And again, it's recommended that it goes towards the back of the freezer or the bottom, so that, again, there isn't that temperature swings. And then when you're rewarming the breast milk, it's important to just run it under warm water. You should never microwave it, because that breast milk can get too hot and it can burn babies. If your breast milk if you don't think you're going to use that breast milk within the first 72 hours, it is best to go ahead and just put that in the freezer. Once the breast milk has been in the freezer and it's thawed, it's best to use it within the first 24 hours, but you can use it up to 72 hours after thawing it. And then if moms choose to formula feed, for whatever reason, it's really important that we educate parents on how to correctly mix the formula, because if it isn't mixed correctly, babies can have electrolyte abnormalities, which can lead to seizures and even death sometimes. So there's different types of formula. There's the ready to feed, which is just ready to feed. You don't have to do anything with it. There is powdered formula, and there's also liquid concentrate formula. And so I always tell the parents to make sure that they read the label real close and make sure that they follow that label exactly as it is shown. We don't want them to dilute it down any, because like I said, that can lead to those electrolyte abnormalities. When doing the powdered formula, it's always important that you put the water in first and then put the powder in afterwards. And you want the powder, when you're doing the powder, to make sure that it's a level scoop, and so you don't want to add more water or more formula, more of that powder, again, to keep the calories right and to keep the electrolytes right. Once that the baby has drank from that bottle, it's good for 1 hour. So again, if you're going to mix a larger batch, that's fine. Just pour out how much you think that the baby is going to drink, and then put the rest of it in the fridge. Once formula has been reconstituted, it's good in the fridge for up to 24 hours, as long as it hasn't touched the baby's mouth. And again, we recommend warming it under warm water and not microwaving it. The ready-to-feed formula, that once it is opened, is good for up to 48 hours if it's stored in the refrigerator. Then once a baby turns about 6 months old, they're ready for some solids. And a lot of times now people are just doing baby-led weaning, which that's letting the baby determine how much they want to eat. And so you just give baby whatever soft foods the parents are eating and let them self-feed themselves. They have spoons that they can teach themselves to feed with. And obviously you just want to give them a small portion and let them determine how much they want to eat. It's important that babies, there's more to eating than just the nutritional part of it, but and also the social aspect of it. So you want your baby to sit in a high chair and be close to you, so they can be a part of the family and learn that behavior that we sit at the table and we eat. It's really important for as they become toddlers. And then it's also important that we don't force babies to eat more than what they want. And so the benefit of the baby-led weaning is they eat as much as they want, and then you just kind of throw away the rest. Now, the risk with that is babies might not be getting enough calories, but you can, be in contact with the pediatrician to know if you're having enough calories and if the baby is gaining weight appropriately. The other thing that you worry about is choking, and so it's really important that you watch for gagging and choking and that you're right there next to baby as they are eating. Great things to feed as first foods are like ripe bananas because they're real soft, berries, avocados, things like that, steamed vegetables, pastas. You could also do some like shredded lean meats. Eggs are good, yogurt, all those kind of real soft things that they can just kind of gum up. You don't want to do anything that is a big choking hazard. So the big choking hazards that I think about are grapes. That's going to be something, even once they're toddlers, you want to make sure they're cut up real well. Hot dogs, any sort of nuts or popcorn, and marshmallows. Those are all big choking hazards that we don't want to feed babies. Peanut butter is okay, and it's actually recommended that you give peanut butter earlier rather than later to prevent allergies, but you just want to water it down real well. So you can either mix a little bit of water with the peanut butter, or you can get the peanut butter powder and mix that. And then sometimes people even mix that in with like oatmeal cereal as a way to give them the peanut butter with something else to help prevent that choking. So back to the high chairs, you want your baby to be in a high chair that is freestanding. Those ones that attach to the tables aren't really very safe. So we recommend the freestanding ones, and make sure that it's not close to a table or a counter or something that the baby could actually push off of and fall back on. And then you want your baby to be fastened in completely. So any strap that they have, you want to use so that they don't fall out of there. So sort of along the lines of choking, but we're going to switch gears a little bit and go to toys that are big choking hazards. So we talked about the big foods that are a big choking hazard, but balloons. And so you should never give a young child a balloon, those latex balloons to play with. They're real fun, but then they chomp on them and then they can choke on that. And so kind of a good rule of thumb is to take either a toilet paper roll or a paper towel roll, and if a toy will fit through there, then it's probably too small for an infant or a toddler to play with. That's something that can get lodged in their airway. Other things, marbles. Kids will choke on marbles pretty easily. And coins and like bouncy balls, those are all dangerous things for them. You also want to make sure that the toys that you're giving them don't have eyes that could, like stuffed animals have eyes that could pull off, because those are also choking hazards. And then anything with a string, because they can choke on the string as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'll kind of touch base a little bit on that too, with just keeping with the choking and with the batteries. So a lot of toys, baby toys, will have those little button batteries that babies can either open up remotes or open up the toys and get those into their mouth. and that's like a true medical emergency. So any of the toys that have that, you want to really make sure that the back of those remotes and stuff have those little screws where it's really buckled down tightly so that they can't open that. And if any of those toys have broken pieces or it's loose and not functioning completely normal, you want to make sure that your toddlers and babies cannot get to that. I'm going to switch over to some car seat safety. We're running a little close on time, so we'll get as much as we can in the next few minutes. So car seats are always going to be a big deal for children. They save lives every single year. The biggest things that we want to make sure of when you get a car seat, so especially if you didn't purchase the car seat new yourself, you want to make sure that you know the history of the car seat. So car seats do expire. Every car seat should have a manufacturing date on it and an expiration date on it, and we do absolutely recommend that you comply with those dates. When we're buckling car seats into the car, you want to make sure that you would never buckle a rear-facing car seat into the front seat of a car with an airbag. You would need to turn that airbag off. The safest place for kids is really in the back seat, so we really recommend that car seats and children be put in the back seat until they are at least 13 years of age. When buckling car seats, you can use either the latch system, which is that lower anchor and tether for child car seats, and that's kind of in the back seat and like down below the seat in between the cushions. There are these anchors back there, and every car has its own manual that says exactly how you should use that and the weight limits, but typically they're good for up to at least 65 pounds. You can also buckle both rear-facing and forward-facing car seats with just the regular seatbelt as well. So if a car doesn't have the latch system, that's okay. You can just use a regular seatbelt as well. So the top tether is also a way that helps to improve the safety of the car seat. So it attaches to the very top of the car seat and kind of tethers to the back seats. And not every vehicle has that, especially if it has a third row. But that's another way to make sure that it's secured. We highly recommend that you check with your local fire department. They usually have car seat experts. So especially with the first time that you're installing it, or especially if it's a new vehicle, that you swing by them, they're always happy to do a free car seat inspection and make sure that it is installed properly. So children, we want to keep them rear facing for as long as possible, so for a minimum of at least 2 years, but we want to try to keep them rear facing for as long as possible. You want to always go off of the weight limit, so each car seat can have a little bit of some different weight variations for when they outgrow the car seat, both in length and weight, for both rear and forward facing. So once they've outgrown their rear facing, then we usually just recommend the rear facing infant carrier. Then we recommend to keep them rear facing in an infant, what's called a convertible car seat. So that's the bigger car seat that doesn't come in and out of the car every time you run into the store. But we want to keep them rear facing that way for as long as we can, and then we turn them around, and so you'll have that car seat till they're much older and then ready for a booster seat. Let's see here. So with the harness too, we want to make sure that the chest clip is always at the armpit level. So sometimes over time it can kind of weasel its way down and kind of be at the bottom of the chest or kind of over the abdomen. So every time we want to make sure that that chest strap is buckled up at the armpit or kind of over the nipple area. We always want to make sure that before you install any car seat as well that you check the manufacturing date, and then you can also check the National Highway Traffic Safety website to make sure that there has been no recalls on that car seat as well. Unfortunately, over these last few years, we've been seeing a lot more of what we call counterfeit car seats, and they are coming from all different sorts of websites. Some are very reputable, like an Amazon, and other from places like Temu. So it's really important that when you get a car seat that you make sure that it has the stickers on the sides, that it should be in both English and Spanish. It has the manufacturing date, the expiration date. It should actually have instructions on even how to install it and things like that as well. And it should also have warning labels on it as well. So if it doesn't have all of those things, then those are probably like a knockoff car seat, and we would not recommend that you use those. One of the other kind of tall tale signs is often that it's missing a chest clip, and though not all car seats are required in the United States to have a chest clip, that's usually one of the easiest ways to pinpoint that it's a counterfeit car seat. When it comes to kids in car seats too, we want to make sure that kids don't get left in hot cars. So there's lots of tips for making sure that you don't forget about your child in the car. So we recommend, like, when you install or put the kid in the car, that you can leave things that you know you wouldn't get out of your car with. So like leaving your car keys in the back seat, or your cell phone, or your lunchbox that you know you would get out and remember every single time before too long, especially if you change your routine. You want to definitely put those things back there. They're suggested that you tell your daycare provider that if I'm more than 10 or 15 minutes late for my normal drop-off time, that please call me to make sure that I didn't make a detour or something didn't change in our routine, that we forgot our child or infant in the car. There's a lot of new legislation that is starting to come out in different states about who's, like, if you're even ever allowed to leave a child in a car, period, while you make a quick run into the grocery store or into a gas station. So I would definitely recommend checking your state's rules, but we really just should avoid leaving children in the car at all times anyway. Some other just home safety tips for kind of all children is going to be making sure that we have outlet covers on all of the outlets, and we want to make sure that they're like the non-choking hazard ones. We want to avoid like window coverings that can easily be pulled down, so like curtains that go all the way down to the floor that babies can tug on to try to pull up on something and then pull all of that stuff down on them. We want to avoid blinds that have long strings, and if they have those, we want to make sure that the strings are tied up onto the wall next to them. We also want to latch all furniture to the wall, so there is a lot of injuries and deaths every single year due to furniture, children, small toddlers pulling up on furniture and it kind of falling forward on them and causing some major head injuries. So using those furniture latches to make sure that all of that is safe as well. And then smoke alarms. So making sure that we have smoke alarms in all of the bedrooms and at least one carbon monoxide poisoning monitor on every single floor of the home as well. Okay. Anything else?
The only other thing that I wanted to touch on is walkers. Walkers cause a lot of injuries every year, and the AAP has actually called for a ban on the sale of infant walkers in the United States, and so we never recommend walkers. There's just too many dangers with them. Babies can go a long distance in a short amount of time, and even if you're right there watching them, especially, make sure that they could fall down the stairs, so you need to make sure gates, all stairs are gated, whether you have a walker or not, just watching for stairs. But also with walkers, they can pull themselves over to the stove and get burned. They can get to a bathroom and drown in a bathtub, and so just recommending that we don't use walkers. They have those like ones that are stationary now, so if you want to put your baby in somewhere so they can interact more, those are much safer, and those are still recommended, but we never recommend walkers. Does anybody have any questions for us? Thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you learned something, and if you guys have any questions, you can just message the NapNap through Facebook Messenger, and they can get it to us. Have a good evening, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, guys.